Jeremiah chapter 10, I want you to notice what it says in verse 1. It says, "Hear ye the word of the Lord, speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it with nails, and with hammers that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good." And while many people think Jeremiah 10 is about Christmas trees, this is a passage that is about idols. And I want you to notice how it mentions that phrase, "they must needs be born." And what I want to talk about tonight are idols and the source of their power. And did you know that idols, graven images, they do have power, but all power has a source. And so what is the power source of an idol? And the reality is, the idol itself is absolutely, completely powerless. But it does have a power source, you could say. And it shows us what the power source is right here. It's the people that are bearing it, the people that are moving it around, the people that are propping it up. They are the actual power source of the idol. And so what the prophet's telling the people here, it's like, don't be afraid of these idols. Yes, they're decking it, they're making it look all fancy, and they might even make it large, but the only reason that idol is standing is because somebody propped it up. The way that idol got there, a group of people, they carried it there. Somebody went out, they cut a tree down, somebody went and they carved it all out, somebody went and they decorated it all up, and boom, there it is. We've got this beautiful, magnificent idol. However, it in itself is completely powerless. It cannot do evil, and it cannot do good. It's just an idol. But at the same time, you and I know that when it comes to idols and certain things that many people, and not as much in America and not as much in modern day, but we know historically that certain idols would often bring great fear to people. In fact, there's some people right now, have you ever seen the videos before where all the Catholics are carrying the statue of Mary and it falls over and everybody freaks out? You know, and they think, boy, something bad's going to happen. You know, and there's almost a power that it has, but yet that superstition, the thoughts, the fears that these people have towards this idol, it has nothing to do with something that idol has done. It has everything to do with something that they were told. So the reality is, if I had some kind of statue up here, let's say of myself, the only way I could get you to fear that idol, to respect that idol, is if I, a living person, can deceive you into believing it has some kind of power. Don't ever touch the holy idol. If you do, you'll drop dead. And then now you've got fear around it. You're careful around it. You know, I might even be able to get you to bring offerings to it or something like that. And therefore, it has a power, but the power is not in the statue itself, because you and I know that if you were here in a room all by yourself with that statue, it's not going to do nothing to you. But somebody who thinks it's going to do something to them, they might get pretty freaked out. So the reality is, everything that's happening with that idol is not a result of anything, any power resonating from that idol. It has everything to do with the individual. We see in 1 Corinthians 8:4, it says, "As concerning therefore eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as there be gods many and lords many." So you and I, we have the knowledge today, and I hope you have the knowledge that idols are nothing. Okay? How many's ever been over to Asian Buffet over in Sterling? How many have seen the big Buddha statue they have in there? Okay? How many are afraid of it? I mean, it's just a funny looking statue. It has no power whatsoever. You know, I'm not worried about it. And you know what we do when we go and we eat there? We pray to Jesus Christ and ask him to bless our food. And I've never one time while praying thought, I hope Buddha doesn't hear me. Because he can't. There's no power. It's a hunk of wood. And if there's any admiration at all when I look at it, it's like, well, somebody knows how to carve out of wood pretty good. But even then, I'm still not that impressed because it's funny looking. And so, I mean, who worships a God that looks like that? It's ridiculous. But at the same time, that idol might have power with somebody, but its actual power source, it's not even from a demon. Okay? It's from the people. They're the ones, some people put that idol in there. Some people propped it up. Look at what it says in 1 Samuel chapter 5, because we see idolatry is a very wicked sin in the Bible. And again, we often act like the idol or the graven image is the bad thing, but the simple fact is the idol has no life, it has no power, it comes from the people. In fact, in the 10 Commandments it says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. Notice that if a graven image was going to come, it's going to be because the people made it. But then God had also said, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them. So I didn't make it, somebody else made it. Well, okay, well now don't bow down to one that you see. Don't give it any power. And I'm going somewhere with this because you all think, I never do any of this stuff. Yes, you would. I'm going to help you understand the way our world works. Okay, because guess what? We all descend from idolaters. It's just kind of in our blood. It is in our nature to be idolatrous. And I want you to understand the power source of idols. And it's going to go not just for actual graven images, but even other idols that we have today. I'm going to help you understand these things. But 1 Samuel 5, verse 1 says, and the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod. When the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it to the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and set him in his place again. Why couldn't Dagon just get up himself? You know why? Because he's an idol. He can't do anything. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off from the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Therefore neither did the priests of Dagon, nor any that come into Dagon's house, tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod unto this day. So again, notice Dagon, it couldn't do anything. The Philistines thought it was going to have some kind of power. The Philistines thought, hey, let's take this Ark of the Covenant that was not intended to be an idol, was not supposed to be an idol, and we don't have any evidence that the Jews ever worshipped it like they did the brazen serpent. But either way, what was the problem with the Philistines, what they did, they had no business taking what belonged to God. They had no business handling that which was holy. And when they defiled it, putting it in their temple, God, okay, not the Ark of the Covenant, God sent a message to the Philistines, and God is the one that knocked over Dagon. God is the one that cut off his hands and heads. And God did that not because God had something to prove to Dagon, but God wanted to prove something to the Philistines. God wanted to prove something to Israel. That God, he is the one true God, and an idol is nothing. It has absolutely no power. And so when Dagon fell on his face, yeah, he got back up. And what was his power source? People. The people propped him back up, but even then, God destroyed him after that. So what does God think of idols? Well, we do know God is not going to share the stage with any god. After he said, thou shalt have no other gods before me, he says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. And he says, for the Lord thy God is a jealous God. Okay, listen, in jealousy, okay, one thing we often use that term wrong. Okay, if you have something that is yours and it belongs to you, and I want it, that's me being envious if it belongs to you. But if you have something that actually belongs to me, okay, that is supposed to be mine. For example, I have every right to be jealous over my wife because she is my wife. She belongs to me, and therefore, if she is, sharing with some things, with someone else, something that belongs to me, I have every right to be jealous over that because she's mine. And when it comes to worship, okay, man should be worshiping God. God deserves all honor and glory and all praise and worship. And when God sees man giving it to someone else, and especially to a thing that they made, God has every right to be jealous, and God will judge that because man has no right to be serving other gods. He is a jealous God. He says in Exodus 34:14, for thou shalt worship no other God. For the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. God went as far as, and we often act like jealousy is like a bad thing. Like, oh, my husband's jealous. Well, he should be. That's how it's supposed to be. And you act like, and if it is such a bad thing, why would God say, my name's jealous? And God is saying that because God has every right to expect worship from us. God does not share his glory. Well, I still worship God too, but I worship other idols. No, God doesn't share his glory. Isaiah 42:8, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. God is not going to share, well, yeah, we've got an idol, but it's of Jesus. Yeah, I don't worship idols unless they're of Jesus. If they're the one in the Catholic Church, it's the giant one over in Rio de Janeiro or something like that. No, God doesn't share his glory with graven images. And let me tell you something, when it comes to a graven image, the glory goes to the maker of that idol. And the reality is, man doesn't even have the ability to make the rock or the tree that they cut it from. But it's the work of man's hands. So when we praise idols, in reality, we're just praising ourselves, or we're praising a man who made that idol, and God is not okay with that. God has always knocked down and defeated every god that man has used to challenge him, and he always will. But for the remainder of this message, I do want to focus on something else that we often refer to as idols that in many ways has the same power source. Okay, so do we get it? An idol is nothing. The power source of an idol, it comes from the people who worship that idol, who serve that idol. And people too. You could say, if you wanted to, that there have probably been kingdoms conquered by the power of an idol. But in reality, it wasn't because of the power source of the statue, but because of a people who believed in that idol, and somebody convinced them that that idol wanted them to go attack some other place, and they did. And so, but at the same time, the power source, it was the people and what they had their faith in, what they were trusting in. So, because an idol is absolutely nothing. And so, when it comes to an idol, the definition is an image, form, or representation, usually of a man or other animal, consecrated as an object of worship, a pagan deity. Idols are usually statues or images carved out of wood or stone or formed of metals, particularly silver or gold. And then in the Webster's 1828, it says the gods of the nations are idols. That's Psalms 96:5. So it's an image is what it is. And again, another definition, it has a person loved, honored to adoration. The prince gives an example. The prince was the idol of the people. So often we refer to people as idols. And you say, well, people have some power. Well, again, all of us have a certain level of power in the sense that we have the ability to get up, we have the ability to work, we have the ability to speak. And some people are more powerful than others. In other words, some people have stronger, they have greater physical might than other people. But when it comes to comparing the strength of one individual to another individual, we don't have a huge range, do we? There's not a gigantic range when it comes to power. However, there are people on this earth who do have great power. But what is the power source of those people, of those individuals? It's still the people, because they have followers. For example, who would you say is more powerful today? Donald Trump or the best fighter that you know? Okay, now if it's a match between Donald Trump and who's a big fighter? I don't even know any of the fighters today. Mike Tyson. Yeah, Mike Tyson, right? I'm still from the 90s. Hey, but again, if Mike or Jake Paul, he beat him up, right? So, or he technically won, kind of. So if there was a fight between Jake Paul and Donald Trump, my money's on Jake Paul, right? If I'm a gambler. However, who clearly has more power? Who has more of an ability to affect the world in a positive or a negative way? Obviously, it's Donald Trump, because here he is the president, and he has been given power by the people. We're the ones that put him there. A lot of people, they have a problem with the fact that a guy who's got all the issues that he has is in this place of power. But let me tell you, he reflects our nation. which ought to tell you a little bit something about our nation right now. And for sure so that one man does not have that much physical power on his own. But at the same time, because of the fact that there are many, 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 many people in this country who love and adore him and think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, I mean, he does have a lot of power. In fact, in this administration, I don't think anyone would doubt that he has way more power now than he did 8 years ago when he became president. Because this time, he won by a lot more. This time, he has a lot more support. He's got a higher approval rating. He's got all these things that are kind of going for him this time. And people, and because so many people right now are so enthusiastic about him, he's going crazy with the power. I mean, he's doing stuff I didn't even know he could do. I'm not even sure he's supposed to be doing some of these things. Some of the things he's doing right now that I didn't even know a president could do, I kind of like. However, at the same time, I'm not a legal expert. I don't know for sure if he should be doing it. However, he's probably going to get away with it. You know why? Because the people have given him a lot of power right now. The people are the power source. And so, obviously any human being has more power than an idol when it comes to, physical power. Even these little kids, they can at least get up on their own. But at the same time, too, little kids, they don't have any influence, where sometimes an idol does have influence. But I say all that to just say, the power source, it's from the people. And so if a multitude of crazy people think that they are doing the will of a statue, then you could say that statue has a lot of power. And if a multitude of crazy people are doing the will of a man, then that man has a lot of power, and it's not wrong to say that. Even when Biden is old and decrepit as he was, as far gone as his brain was he not one of the most powerful men on earth? And I don't say the most powerful because it was doubtful, because his leadership was so weak, because people didn't trust him. But at the same time, he was very powerful because his power comes from the people. And so why is it that some men who are physically weak and decrepit like Biden are still so powerful? And it's because of their position. It's because of their authority, and ultimately because of people who will follow them. I can get up and I can declare myself, you know what? I'm the king. I declare myself king of America. Okay? Now, how far do y'all think I'm going to get with that? How much do you think I'm going to accomplish with that? Hey, now you all can help me out with that. We start small, right? If I can get you all convinced, that gives me a little bit of power. All right, we're probably not going to be able to do a whole lot. I don't know how many guns we got between all of us in here. But again, I start recruiting. I'm not recruiting YouTube. All right, don't come after me, FBI. I'm making a point. But again, if I could convince enough people that I am the king of America, then and we're going to be challenged at some point. But if I can get enough people, if I can get millions, you know what? We can go take over. We can go and then all of a sudden, this guy, not real strong, not real powerful physically speaking, if I could convince enough people that I was the king of America, I could become the most powerful man. We could defeat the president. I could have the nuclear codes, all that kind of stuff. Man, no. So obviously, none of it's going to happen, but I think y'all get the point. And so what we need to understand about our modern day idols that are people, okay? I'm talking about idols that are people. The power source is the same. The only reason they are powerful, and there are impressive people, but again, the range is really small, okay? Just to illustrate, let's just say this is the weakest person in the world that's about to drop dead, and then here's the strength of like the strongest man in the world, whoever that is, okay? And this represents a range, okay? When it comes to God, he's way out, on the other side of the nation, okay? And so between man, we're not talking about a lot of strength. However, though, too, you start getting the people behind them, then we can greatly increase that strength. We can greatly increase that power, and we can get pretty far out there. And there are people there are individuals who have changed the world. sometimes for the better, sometimes the worse, because they were great leaders and they got people to follow them. And so the people are the reason they are power. And so my challenge to everyone today is to just not contribute to the power of the evil idol. Because many people are idols and they are evil. And we often love to attack certain idols like Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, that woman's got some power. That woman's got some influence. Why? She's got a ton of money and she's got a ton of fans. Now, she's not as powerful as they thought, because when she endorsed Kamala, guess what? A lot of people didn't care. And all the dumb Swifties were all too young to vote. So they overestimated her power. She wasn't as powerful as they thought, and thank goodness for that. But but guys like Donald Trump, whoever is famous, whoever everyone's talking about, what we should talk about sometimes is not so much the individuals, because again, obviously somebody like Taylor Swift or even Donald Trump, I don't know these as people as individuals. I don't know them as a person, but the reality is the reason they are powerful right now is because of the people. Taylor Swift is powerful because millions of people listen and buy her music, go to her concerts. This one tour she went on, they were talking about like making $1 billion or something like that. I mean, it's crazy. It's because of people. I don't even think she sings that good. I mean, I don't get it, and I don't really want to get it. But either way, I can't deny the power. I can't deny the influence. But it's not about the individual, it's about the people. And so these people, or often too, our leaders are nothing more than individuals who in reality, and this is what's going on with Trump right now, okay? Because I've been seeing it all week. I wasn't able to watch a lot of news this week, but I noticed there was a bunch of Baptists all over social media. I told you so about Trump. I told you, I'm calling out all these people that wouldn't stand with Trump. I'm calling out all these people that wouldn't support Trump. Look at all these wonderful things that are happening. And they're talking like he's the Messiah. They're talking like we're going in the millennial kingdom right now. And then, of course, then you got the spiritual people. I hate all politicians. They're all reprobates. This is all just a psyop. All this good stuff that Trump's doing, they're just setting us up. They're just setting us up to take the mark of the beast. And it's like every time a politician does something good, we're always getting set up for something bad. And it's like, well, can't we be excited about the one good thing we're doing? Come on, and listen, I'm excited about some of the stuff that Trump is doing. And maybe he is setting us up. But you know what? When they're doing bad stuff, they're setting us up too. So if they're going to set us up, let's get a couple good things in while we're at it, right? I mean, come on, people. Let's stop being so negative. So, but that's kind of what was going on today. But let me explain to you. Okay, it's like, how could Baptist preachers praise this man so much? It's an adulterer, that's immoral, it's got a filthy mouth, it's got all these, that's not even pro-life in reality, it's got all these problems. Why are they propping him up? You know why? Because right now, he's doing their political bidding. Right now, we're listening to Trump say a lot of things that we've been saying for a long time. I don't know about you, but I was pretty happy when I heard him give a speech and he said there's officially 2 genders. And I know he doesn't decide that. That was just already a fact. But isn't it nice to hear somebody in leadership actually acknowledge there's only 2 genders? And I just pictured that one lady screaming no when that was said. There was a bunch of freaks and weirdos probably all over the country that started crying when he said that. There's probably a bunch of trannies and homos out there that think that they're all going to get executed now because Trump's in office. And you and I know it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to the trannies. Nothing's going to happen to the trannies, but you know what? Let's all take pleasure in the fact that they think something is right now, because they do. They're in a total panic right now. And so again, when we hear someone with power, when we hear someone in leadership advancing our agenda, you know what we want to do? We want to prop those people up. This week I was thinking about it at the conference we were at. Pastor Tim DeVries preached a super good message on Israel. And I remember when he was preaching that message, I was just like, man, this is so good. Nobody who has any love for the Bible at all could listen to this message and not be on our side. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm glad he's on our side. I'm glad he's on our side in this issue. And when I hear a guy like him preaching so good, Pastor Boyle, too, he preached a really good message in the post-trib that I'm listening to this like, how could anybody listen to this and not be on our side? And so when I hear guys like them, even guys like Pastor Boyle and Pastor DeVries, when they're preaching things really good that line up with my agenda, you know what I'm thinking? I wish all Baptists could hear these guys preach. I want all of them to get promoted in the Baptist world. I want those guys to become more influential. You know why? Because they are advancing my agenda as well. I like what they're saying. This lines up with what I'm saying. This lines up with what I think. Their desire for things is the same as my desire for things. So you know what? And I'm not being fake. I genuinely feel this way about it. Them. Some of it might be carnal. Some of it I think might be a positive thing. But I want them to succeed. I want them to be liked. I want them to be popular. You know why? Because they're advancing my agenda. Now, what do you all think's going to... And so, here I am propping them up, saying all these good things about them. Now, what if they go out next week and start teaching things contrary to me? Well, now, you know what? I want to take away their power. Because now they're pushing in a different direction than I am. And so all of a sudden now these people that I was propping up, and again, maybe crossing a line. Maybe go, and sometimes people we maybe cross a line and we go from just support, and I believe we should support leadership as long as leadership remains in its place. I believe we should do that. I believe we should have love for people as long as we do not allow that love for them cause us to support them in sin. Then I believe we should do all of those things. But when we cross a line and we go from just supporting them, encouraging them, loving them like we're supposed to where we are idolizing them. The way we know when we're idolizing them is when we see them do something wrong and we continue to support them. So again, you've got these pastors that were at this conference. They're advancing an agenda that I agree with, and they're doing a really good job at it. And then, so because of that, I'm like, man, these guys, they're good for my cause. But then if later on they go and I find out one of them's an adulterer or something like that, and it's like, but this guy's such a good speaker. He's got all these people following him. He's helping win people over to my side of things. I don't want him to go down. So what I do, I keep propping him up. You know what? Now I'm crossing the line. Now I'm idolizing this guy because I'm propping him up above where I should be. I'm violating the Word of God. They've disqualified themselves, and therefore they need to step down, even if that's going to be negative to my agenda. Because, the last thing I want is everybody who agrees with me to be like an adulterer, to be some kind of pervert, to be some kind of wicked person. I don't want that. I don't want to be associated with that. And so often, too, what people do, and we're going to see, I'm going to give some examples of this in history. But let's just say, too, that, sometimes we find out they're bad, and we do. When they start making our cause look bad, you know what we do? We want to get rid of them, don't we? Because, again, even though at one time we were propping them up, now they're hurting our agenda, so we let go of them. And that's what happens in the political world. The reason certain politicians get so popular is because they learn how to tap in to what the masses want. And right now, the masses are done with this woke nonsense. Right now, the masses are fed up with the trans stuff. And so, folks, do we really remember when they asked Donald Trump if they'd let Bruce Jenner go into whatever bathroom, he's like, yeah, he didn't care. Does anybody actually think Donald Trump is against trannies? Of course not. We don't think that. But boy, he's saying a lot of the right things right now. You know why? Because that's what the masses want. And I think it's good that he's doing that, but it's not his conviction. And so remember how we were with Trump too in 2020 when everybody got locked down? Then all of a sudden we had a problem with him. You know why? Because he wasn't advancing our agenda anymore. He wasn't helping the cause. Of course, then he went right back to it when after he shut the churches down, I'm standing for freedom and I'm opening them all up. Well, honestly, why did you ever shut it down in the first place? And so So, we do, as people who are idolatrous, we are also very fickle too. And so the funny thing though, when it comes to idols, if we have a big statue of Buddha or whatever, and then we just decide, you know what, this statue is making us look stupid, let's get rid of it and get a new one. Here's the great thing about statues. They'll never complain. They won't whine. They won't get upset. They will go wherever we tell them to, or we put them, not tell them to go. They'll go wherever we put them, and they won't bother us. Now, this is the awesome thing about people and their idols. Okay, often people fall for the hype. When everybody's praising them, when everybody's talking about how great they are, only because they are advancing their agenda. And then whenever they finally, for whatever reason, stop doing what the people want, what do? They always throw them under the bus. They try to get a new idol, but whenever we try to place people as idols, the one that we had before doesn't shut up. They cry like a baby, and they throw a great big hissy fit, and they try to take everybody down with them. And that's exactly, what happens, because often the difference between the person that's an idol and a statue, the statue doesn't have a brain to believe the stuff we say about it. A statue doesn't have a brain, so we can't convince it has power. But with people, we can convince them they're the greatest. With people, we can convince them that they are the answer to life's problems, that they are the savior of the country, that they are the only thing helping fundamentalism survive. They often believe those things, and when we find out they're bad and we try to set them aside, they don't shut up. But the reality is, you know what, as people, we've got to just stop using idols. We got to stop propping people up as idols. And so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But again, leaders, they're nothing more than individuals who are bearing the image or agenda of the masses. They are a reflection of who we are, especially in countries like America. So I want to take some time, though, to look at a story in the Bible, because this is what you need to understand about all people who become idols. All of them. Okay, turn over to 1 Kings chapter 12. 1 Kings chapter 12. We're going to be looking at this story here in a few weeks when we go through 1 Kings. But I want to briefly illustrate something with the life of Rehoboam to show something that's commonly seen in our world of idols that are constantly falling. Because every time man gets propped up as an idol, he always falls. You know why? God doesn't share his glory with another. Whether it be a statue, whether it be a man. Okay, y'all want to prop me up as an idol? I'll like it for a little while. I might even like it a lot. The problem is God's not going to like it at all, and I'm going to get knocked down. So don't tempt me. Maybe a little bit, but not too. No, don't tempt me. Okay, don't tempt me. The one big difference too between the idol of wood, the idol of stone, and the idol of flesh is while they both get their power from the people, the idol of wood and stone has no will, while the idol of flesh often does have their own will, and so it can sometimes conflict with the masses and with their power source. So 1 Kings chapter 12 in verse 1 says, And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him a king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake to Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father and his heavy yoke, which he put on us, lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart ye for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. So you've got the people, they got weary under Solomon. He worked them pretty hard. Now you can say these people are just being lazy. I don't know that. Solomon accomplished quite a bit. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's say Solomon expected too much on them. So now a new leader is in town, and what we do is we have the people coming together saying, let's see if we can influence this king, if we can get him to conform to our will. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to shape this man into the type of leader that they want. And again, that's what's going on in the Baptist world. In the Baptist world, there is a type of leader that we want. There is a type of leader that we desire. And sometimes we want it so bad, we almost project it on an individual who is not even that thing. And often, too, a good politician, they will figure out what you want them to be like, and they will portray themselves as that. They will conform. They're like chameleons. That's what good politicians do. But in reality, when we prop these people up, it's because we are convinced, and it's our way of trying to influence them. That's what we're doing. And so that's what's going on here with Rehoboam. They're saying, we don't want you to be like your father. We want you to go easier on us. And you all know the story. We're not going to take time to read all of it. But you have the old men who they counsel them. It's like, hey, do what these people say. Because when they said, if you do this, we'll serve you, basically what they're saying is we'll cooperate. Because it helps a lot when you're a king if your kingdom is cooperating with you. We see in the book of Acts, while Rome was a world power during that time, they were still very careful with how they handled the Jews because they knew things were very fragile, and if the Jews revolted, it would be a great deal of trouble for them, and it ended up being a great deal of trouble. Rome still won, but not without great loss. And so the people, they always have some power, and the more powerful a king is, the more cooperative the people are, the more powerful the king is. And so they're telling him, we'll cooperate with you, we'll serve you, we'll do what you want us to do, but you got to lighten the load a little bit. The old men said, give them what they want, and they'll serve you, and the kingdom will be strong. And I think they probably would have been right. But notice what the young men said. Because let me just ask you, while Solomon was in fact a great leader, okay, if you study Solomon and Rehoboam, who was a better man? Who was a stronger man? Who was a wiser man? For sure, Solomon. Solomon was far superior to Rehoboam. But that doesn't mean Rehoboam can't still be powerful. But Rehoboam is not his father. But what does Rehoboam do in here? After he consults with the young men said to him that let's look at verse 13. In verse 13, the king is taking the advice of the young man, and the king answered the people roughly. You know what he's doing? He's talking big here. I'm going to prove I'm strong. I'm going to prove I'm hardcore. And instead of, taking into consideration a reasonable request, what does he do? I'm the king. Y'all are going to listen to me. Listen up, you guys. And he said, and he spake unto them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy. I'll add to your yoke. I'm more hardcore than my father. He said, my father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And so basically, what ends up happening, the kingdom ends up splitting as a result of this bad decision. You know what Rehoboam tried to do? While the people were trying to conform him to something, Rehoboam, he decided he was going to try to portray himself as something that he wasn't. And as a result of it, things fell apart. He ended up losing the kingdom. So what we have here is a story. You have people wanting to shape the king into something different than the previous king. I think it was a reasonable request. And a good leader is going to be aware of the struggles of his kingdom. It's like you've got the punks out there. You've got the nut jobs. You've got the drag queen Christians out there who act like, husbands, basically, if you're a strong leader, you're going to beat the snot out of your wife, beat the snot out of your kids, and that's what it means to be a strong leader. It's like, no, actually being a strong leader is being an effective leader, and an effective leader is one who is able to recognize what his, kingdom is capable of, and recognize what his wife and children are capable of. And sometimes we can expect too much. Have you ever had a boss that expected too much of you? It's like, hey, what you're asking me to do is physically impossible. That's not right. That's not good. And a good king is one that it's going to recognize the limitations that he has. He's going to recognize the limitation that his kingdom has, and he is going to rule with love and care. And sometimes as a king, you got to kick people in the backside a little bit, motivate them. Sometimes you have to show that strength, but you don't injure, you don't wound, you don't hurt. That's not being a good leader. But again, fakes Drag queens always want to pretend there's something they're not. And Rehoboam was not stronger than his father. He was not wiser than his father. He was not anything like his father. And what Rehoboam should have done is just been who he was and trusted in God and just led as the Lord desired. He should have talked to the prophets. He should have listened to better counsel. He should have listened to godly men. He should have listened to the older men. But no, while they tried to form him into something that in this case I think was reasonable, he tried to portray himself as something that he just wasn't. And so he followed some bad advice. And this is what happens in the influencer world today on social media. Often when people get a platform, they just follow the will of their audience. And so if they find an audience of IFB people, they tend to make videos taking a strong stand in that direction. They're standing with the King James, they're standing for soul winning, but a lot of times that's not even who they really are. But this is what their audience wants. Their audience, they enjoy the videos where I'm calling everybody out. So even though I don't really need to call everybody out, maybe this person's not worthy of being called out, that's what my fans want. So what do? They start calling everybody out. It's like, hey, a lot of people, they're listening to this other King James guy, so I got to out King James him. What? So people will follow me. And they're always just trying to outdo each other. And you know what? It often works. It often gets you the bigger view count. It often gives you more followers. But the reality is, you're just letting a group of people lead you. They're propping you up. And then, and they're on the comments talking about how great you are. But it's only because you're saying what they want you to say. And the reality is, you're not that great. The reality is, you're not even that influential. You are being influenced. And that happens with people all the time. The reality is, the people who often follow, or the people we often follow, and our favorite influencers, they aren't even necessarily people who we love and respect for their opinion. But we follow them and promote them because we love hearing our opinion coming out of their mouth. We love hearing them say things that we want to say, but we wouldn't say. That's why we listen to the shock jocks. Okay, have you ever just looked at some of these, have you ever just wanted to, when you're talking about certain groups and certain people, just say the word, most terrible things in the world, but we probably shouldn't go that far. But there's always that guy on the internet that will. And you know what? We like listening to him because it helps us out. Back in the day, Phil Kidd was the guy we used to go to for hard preaching. And you know why? Because we loved hearing him cream the sodomites. We loved hearing him say extreme things. But you know what? Later, he kind of backed down a lot of that stuff. So you know what we did with that idol? We set him aside and found a different one. I want to find another crazy guy that's still saying crazy stuff about the sodomites. And again, we liked hearing the things that we thought coming out of their mouth. And Phil Kidd just had a way of saying these things. It was just hilarious. It was just hilarious the way he would say these things. And it wasn't that we just were like, wow, that was really deep. I won't even repeat some of the things that he would say. And it wasn't deep. It was but it was entertaining. And it often reflected how we felt, maybe in a more extreme way. Often people find themselves being some spokesperson for a cause, and what ends up happening is powerful forces often get behind them and start trying to influence their message. And so they use them to be the face of an agenda. This happens all the time with preachers and politicians. High up figures will see that they connect well with the people, and powerful forces get behind them and start trying to pull their strings. And what always happens when people become bad for a cause, you know what we do with them? These people we propped up, we immediately dump them. That's what we often do because they no longer serves our purpose. This happens to every idol, and watching them melt down is entertaining. For example, my opinion too, Martin Luther King Jr. He was an activist. He was somebody who was influential. He was charismatic. The people loved him. I believe with Martin Luther King, high up people got behind him because he was advancing kind of a communist agenda that they liked. But what ended up happening? They ended up finding out this guy was a scumbag. He was a moral degenerate, and his opposition got proof of that. And rather than letting him make their cause look bad, you know what they did? They made a hero out of him. That's what happened to him. And his cause became more powerful when they killed him. That's what happened. And now, do you think Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to get shot? No. But he wasn't going to stop being a degenerate. And so once he no longer served useful, they dumped him. They got rid of him because he was not advancing. He wasn't advancing their cause. He couldn't handle the fame and the power. He got caught up in all kinds of debauchery. He was going to hurt their cause, so they made a hero out of him. And that happens all the time with idols. As soon as we find out, hey, they're no good for the cause, we dump them. And hey, even in a situation where we don't go as far as making them an idol, there have been preachers in the past that because I liked what they were preaching, because I liked what they stood for, I'm propping them up. I'm telling everybody, hey, listen to this guy. This is a good guy because I want his agenda. I want his message to get out. But sometimes you find out those guys are bad dudes. Sometimes you find out, hey, they're not all that we thought they were. They're not all the things that we said they were, the things that we hoped they were, the things that we tried to portray them to be. And once it comes out, hey, these people are not that great, you know what we all want to do? We want to cast them to the side. Because now they're making the cause look bad. And again, but unlike a statue, they throw a fit. Unlike a statue, they have absolute meltdowns. And so think about it. Most of the people today who we've built statues to were people like Martin Luther King. They were nothing more than somebody that was propped up. Even some of the great preachers of the past, Billy Graham, okay, who I think they put a statue of him in the Capitol Rotunda, if I'm not sure. I'm not positive about that. I could be wrong. But he got propped up. You know why? Because he advanced an agenda they wanted. They got behind him. They controlled him. Billy Sunday, okay? Billy Sunday, he was used by politicians to advance prohibition. Okay? And listen, I'm against alcohol and everything, but without a doubt, there were certain people within politics that saw he was influential, he was a good speaker, Christians listened to him, and they propped him up. And they used him in a big way. Who's the other one I was thinking of? J. Frank Norris was another one too. That he was another very famous, influential, big names. Politicians got behind him, and you know what? They used him to advance a lot of Zionist ideology. That's happened with a lot of the greats. And so what we've got to realize, whenever you see a big name, an influential figure, there are people out there. Again, I've just got a small YouTube channel, but because there are people out there who agree with my cause, you know what? And I'm not saying it's all sin. They are propping it up. They're sharing it. Why? Because they want the agenda to be advanced. But as soon as I am bad for that agenda, they'll throw me under the bus. Hey, and you know what? They should. They should, because now I'm hurting the cause. And if I let these things go to my head, I'll throw a big hissy fit. I'll start twisting the Bible to make it sound like I'm still the hero somehow. But that's not how it really is. So either way, anytime you see an influential person, they're influential and they're powerful because of the people. These people, in reality, they were never special, and they were never even really that important to anyone. They just represented an agenda of someone, and as soon as they were bad for the cause, they were dropped. And so when you idolize someone, just understand too, when you go that far, we all do this a little bit, whether it be your favorite podcaster out there, whether it be your favorite politician, influencer, whoever, but if you go as far as idolizing them, where you're letting them get away with wrong, you're not just hurting yourself, but you're hurting them. And worse than that, you're sinning against a very jealous God. And so don't idolize people. They're not that great. From one person to another, we're really just not that impressive. We really aren't. And so just don't make a big deal. Support people where they deserve support, where it's right. And when they cross lines, you don't have to follow them. I think as a pastor, you ought to support me. But if I cross a line and I overstep my authority, if I go against the Word of God, do not give me that power to continue in that. Because now you're a partaker in my evil deeds, if that's the case. And so with that, let's pray. Dear Lord, I pray this message was a help to everyone. I pray, Lord, you'll help us to not be idolatrous with people. Help us not prop people up. And Lord, help us to just not be enamored and that impressed with people. Help us to understand people are people. We're really nothing. But Lord, it's about causes. It's about agendas that are out there. And so help us to not be deceived when we see certain people saying things that we even like. Help us to understand that a lot of times they're just tapping into a market for their own personal gain, and help us to just give honor to whom honor is due, custom to whom custom, and to just not give people more than what is deserved or required. In your name we pray. Amen.